I read this whole book. And not only did I read this whole book, I annotated this whole book. And can I just say, Dantes has to be the most petty man alive. This book is a work of genius. I think this book is incredible. I also think everyone should read it. So if this is something you're interested in reading, I would stop watching this video. I feel like a lot of people won't read it because look how big it is, you know? Like a lot of people aren't going to read this. And if you're not going to read it, you want to sit down and listen to this because what a fantastically fun book. I'm so in awe of this book that I made my dad read it. My dad's currently halfway through it, but I needed to talk about it sooner than when he was going to finish it. And I also think more people need to know about this book, which is why I'm making this video. This chair is so creepy. Oh my God. And I wrote 13 pages of notes so that I can explain to you everything that happened in this book. But it's so good. I'm going to stop rambling about the genius of this book and just get into it. But I just want everyone to know that so much happens in this book that I've divided it into 5 sections so it's easier to follow. And after every section, I have a slideshow for everyone just to show you how everyone's connected because there's a lot of people. And if I look over, like those are my notes, if I miss something, things are not going to make sense later on. You know what I'm saying? Prime Video did a short series of the Count of Monte Cristo. And while I haven't seen it all the way through, I'm going to be using the characters in that for reference so that you can follow along, especially because Sam Claflin plays the Count of Monte Cristo and I love him. So that's why I've decided to use it. It takes its own adaptations from the book, so I will be following the book to a T because this book is genius. These are the 5 parts. Part 1 is the intro, meeting the character setup. Part 2, I've labeled infiltrating high society. Part 3 is living high society life in Paris. Part 4, I've labeled meddling. And part 5 is shit hits the fan, because I'm telling you, shit hits the fan. Oh my God. Part 1, introducing the characters and the setting. So where does this book take place? So this takes place in France right after the end of the Bonapartists and the Jacobians and the guillotine and like after the French Revolution and when the monarchy is re-put back in place. I also want to apologize if I mispronounce anything. Please give me grace. I don't know how to say these things. So that's the setting of this book. In Marseille, there's this ship owner named Mr. Morel. And he has a ship called the Pharaon, and on the Pharaon is our main character, Edmond Dantes. Also on this boat is this mofo named Danglers. And Dantes is 19 and Danglers is 26. And essentially, when the ship owner died of sickness, Edmond Dantes kind of took over being captain. The crew loved him and everyone just like liked him being captain. He's like a natural sailor, all those good vibes. He comes back to port on this boat and Morel's incredibly happy. Morel loves Edmond Dantes. And since the captain died and everyone liked Edmond Dantes as captain, he's about to put Edmond Dantes as captain of the Pharaon from here on out. Now, Danglers, finance man for the boat, is like upset that Edmond Dantes is getting all this preferential treatment. He saw that the captain gave Dantes a letter right before dying, and he thinks it's a treasonous letter. The captain said, don't show anyone this, but just deliver it to Notier when you get to Marseille. When Dantes gets to Marseille, he first goes visited his loving father. It's just him and his father in the world. And after visiting his father, he goes and checks in with his fiancée, Mercedes. Now, she's a Catalan girl, doesn't really have any family. The only family she has is a cousin named Ferdinand. Now, Dantes and Mercedes, they decide to get engaged. And they decide, let's go get married tomorrow. Why wait for this happy affair? Now, Danglers is jealous of Dantes because Dantes has the job. And Ferdinand, Mercedes' cousin, is also in love with Mercedes. So now Ferdinand is also mad at Dantes because Dantes got the girl. So Dantes got the job and Dantes got the girl at 19, setting him up for failure. There's also a neighbor, Carterus, and this man is kind of evil, like kind of taking all the money from Dantes' father. So Dantes' father is very, very poor. And Carterus, Ferdinand, and Danglers squad up and write anonymous letter to send to the police about how Dantes has a letter in his pocket that he's going to bring to Paris that's about treason. In this conversation, it's Danglers who writes the letter anonymously and Ferdinand who delivers it. Carterus is just kind of drunk in there, but still not stopping it. So the next day comes, it's a half hour before the wedding, and the police come and arrest Dante. This is where we meet another incredibly important character. Enter Villefort. Villefort is a low-level attorney whose dad is a Jacobian, not for the monarchy. Villefort is for whoever's in power, or the monarchy. And it's also his wedding day. And he's about to marry Mademoiselle Saint-Maron. And, he's trying to prove to everyone that he's a loyal monarchist despite what his father is. So that's who Villefort is. So Dantes and Villefort are about to be married on the same day. Dantes is arrested and Villefort gets called in. So he has to go. Dantes shows Villefort the letter. He has no idea what the content of the letter, but he shows Villefort the letter and it's labeled to M. Notier, Villefort's father. So the letter was from the captain from the island where Napoleon was from to his father to do another uprising against the monarch. Villefort freaks out because this will ruin his career at being an attorney. So he burns the letter and tells Dante, I have to do this so that you're not indicted of the crime, when really he's so I'm not indicted of the crime. And Dantes knows none of this. Dantes doesn't know who Notier is. He doesn't know who Villefort is. He's just oh, okay, sure. And so he's you can leave now. The guards will take you out. The guards take him into a boat, take him to the prison on the island. It's literally not until they're on the island that Dantes is oh shit, I got arrested. He's I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not a criminal, and no one listens to him, obviously. So that's how Dantes was arrested on his wedding day. So Dantes is now in jail. Okay, his father dies broke and heartbroken, doesn't have any money, and is depressed that his son is in jail. Mr. Morel, the ship owner, pays for the funeral, and Mercedes stays with the father until he dies. Dante goes insane in jail. He goes crazy. He loses his mind. He wants to die. He wants to starve. 4 years of this, he starts hearing a noise. He hears another prisoner digging a tunnel, and then he finally meets this other prisoner. It's the Abe Faria. This is when I got invested. I loved the Abe Faria as a character. I'm so sorry if I'm saying it wrong. The Abe Faria was trying to escape the prison and dug the wrong way, so he accidentally connected to Dante's cell. And for the next 10 years, they spend every day in each other's cells. And the Abe Faria, he was the abbé for this rich family, and he was a highly intellectual man, so he knows Italian, French, Spanish, English, Arabic, all these languages, and teaches them all to Dante. He teaches him how to be a high member of society, just teaches him everything that he knows. He also, in this time, tells Dante why he's in jail. Was oh, yeah, it makes sense. Danglars is jealous of your position. Ferdinand was jealous of you because you got the girl, and Villefort is the son of Notier, so he needed to burn that evidence and you go to jail so that he doesn't get called out for treason. From that moment on, Dante was I'm gonna avenge these people. And also the Abb was the priest for a really rich family. That family got in a whole situation. The father hid the money because he was scared that the people were gonna try to take his money, and then no one could find where the money is. The Abb found it and then was arrested before he could get to it. So he told Edmond Dantes that if he escapes to go to the island of Monte Cristo, the money is hidden there. So for the next 10 years, Dantes is learning all these things, and they are digging a tunnel to get out of the prison, have an escape plan together. And while they're building this, the Abb has a seizure and barely recovers from it. And he's I know that the third seizure is gonna kill me. This has happened to my family before, blah, blah, blah. And so they continue to dig this tunnel, and then they're okay, this is the night we're gonna escape. The Abb has a seizure. And Dantes was I promise I'll stay with you all the way through. So he doesn't escape on the night that they plan their escape. And Dantes is what do I do? I can't escape now because of their plan. And then he's oh, I'm gonna switch my body out with his, so when they go to dig that body, I will be dug instead, and then I can crawl out of there and escape. But since the prison is on an island, the cemetery is literally the ocean. Dante didn't know this, so he had a cannonball tied around his ankles, and he was thrown into the ocean. Remember, he's a sailor, so he's able to fight the sea. It starts swimming. And then a smuggler ship picks him up, and they're oh, he's a good sailor. So they kept him. And then the island of Monte Cristo is an uninhabited island, near Marseille, that a lot of the smugglers use to smuggle their goods. One day that they're camped out on the island, he pretends to fall and break his legs, and he's just leave me on the island for a week, and I'll come join you guys afterwards. They leave. He's on the island alone. He finds all the treasure. Boom. He's now incredibly wealthy. So after sailing on this pirate ship for a little bit, he leaves the ship, creates his own vessel, creates an alias as Sinbad the Sailor. He doesn't go by Edmond Dantes because obviously that man's supposed to be in jail. He goes back to Marseille, realizes that his dad is dead and died of hunger and starvation, and that Morel was the one that paid for his funeral. And he also learns that Morel is about to go bankrupt because of the finances that he was sieved from by his financial advisor, Danglers. Danglers effed over Mr. Morel as well. So basically, he realizes that Morel is bankrupt and that Morel is going to kill himself because that's a shame on everyone and everything. And the best thing he could do is kill himself. This idea of, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to kill myself, happens so much in this book. Everyone's so dramatic. Everyone's so dramatic. I wish I could tell you that they weren't. They are. Dantes as Sinbad the Sailor, like, does like a bunch of money things, and then the day that Mr. Morel is going to commit suicide, a bunch of money shows up, and he's saved. Yay! This is the end of section 1. Dantes is now, he's Sinbad the Sailor, and he also saved the Morel family from dying because of all the respect that they did for his father. So that was the end of section 1. So just to recap, we have Edmond Dantes. He worked for Mr. Morel. So did Danglers. In jail, he met the Abbe Faria, who told him of all the money hidden on the island of the Count of Monte Cristo. Dantes and Mercedes are engaged and in love with each other and about to get married. Her cousin Ferdinand is also in love. Villefort has a father notaire who's a villain to the crown, and he wants to be in the crown's power. Carterousse is the neighbor, and these three are the one that write the mysterious letter to indict Edmond Dantes, and he's the one who gets the letter, sees it's made for notaire, burns the letter, and actually puts Edmond Dantes in jail where he meets the Abbe. Everyone follow? Okay, good. Now you've been introduced to the first set of characters, very important. Now is where Dantes decides to start putting his little fingers into high society to enact revenge on the people who put him in jail. He dresses up as a priest, calls himself Abe Bassoni, and he goes to this inn where he meets the man who's running the inn and his wife, and it happens to be Carterousse, the old neighbor, and he starts asking Carterousse questions about, the people in his life, and says, oh, Dante died in jail, and he left this diamond, and he split it between you and Mercedes and Danglers. I don't know if I mentioned the timeline, but he spent 14 years in jail. Basically, he just learns from Carterousse that the three men who did him most dirty, Ferdinand, Villefort, and Danglers, are doing great in Parisian high society. Danglers has moved up from doing the finances for the ship and is a wealthy banker in Paris. Ferdinand was in the army and did a heroic act and now is in the house and high person in society. He also learns that Mercedes married Ferdinand, but that she's not very happy in that marriage because she never seems to want to see anyone or do anything. Also learns that because Villefort warned the king about the news in the letter that he brought to Villefort, that Villefort was moved up to the king's attorney. So he went from a normal attorney to the king's attorney. After this, we meet a new man. His name is Franz de Epiphany. He's going to Rome for carnival. He has a few days to spare, and he goes out shooting, and then he kind of gets brought accidentally to the island of Monte Cristo, where he meets the Count of Monte Cristo. He goes in the rock cave to meet the Count of Monte Cristo, and he takes some sort of drugs with the Count. He has a trip of a lifetime. And then he heads back to Rome to meet his friend Albert de Morcerf for Carnival. We also meet Luigi Vampa. He was a sheep farmer, and he basically had a whole situation, and then he meets the Abbe Bassoni, who saves him in a different situation. Now he's incredibly loyal to the Abbe, aka the Count of Monte Cristo. And also Luigi Vampa, through this whole backstory and blah, 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 is now the most infamous bandit in all of Rome. Put that in your pocket for later. So when Albert and Franz are looking for a carriage to take them all around Rome for carnival, they realize that there are none. But the Count of Monte Cristo is staying in the same hotel as them. How convenient. And would you look at that, the Count of Monte Cristo has another carriage. So convenient. And when they're out and about in the carriages for carnival, Albert has a little flirty moment with this girl, and it's I'm gonna go hook up with her. And he gets kidnapped by Luigi Vampa. The ransom note's you need 4,000 francs or whatever the currency is to save him. They're 300 short. So Franz goes to the Count and is Count, can I borrow a little bit of money just for the time being so I can save my friend from the bandits? And the Count's yes, let me help you. And the Count of Monte Cristo and Franz go and free Albert. Now, Franz had seen some sketchy stuff about Count. It's Albert, but Count was kind of sketchy. And Albert's he just saved my life. If you save someone's life, would you want them to be, talking behind your back? And Franz is no. He's Albert's exactly. He saved my life from the bandits, and I need to say thank you to them. And the Count's I've actually never been to Paris before. Albert de Morcerf is I will introduce you to Parisian high society as a thanks for saving my life. And the Count is bet, thanks. So we're at the end of section 2. Time for the recap. So, Edmond Dantes going around known as Sinbad the Sailor. He's also going around known as the Abe Bassoni. And he's also going around as the Count of Monte Cristo. So he kind of has a lot of personas we need to keep track of. Sinbad the sailor took Franz de Epiphany to the island of Monte Cristo, got him high on drugs, made him have visions. He is besties with Albert de Morcerf, who the Count of Monte Cristo saved from the bandits of Rome, Luigi Vampa. Are we following? They're homies, they're bros. The Abe Bassoni saved Vampa, which is why when the Count of Monte Cristo goes to save Albert, Luigi Vampa's totally down with it. The Abe Bassoni also visited Carterousse, and he learned that Villefort, king's attorney, highest judge of the land, Ferdinand, won medals and is like high up in the house court common thing. Danglars, money man, he's rich now. And also that Mercedes is married to Ferdinand. Part 3, High Society Paris. So, Albert has a breakfast to introduce the Count for the first time to high society Paris and to all his homies, okay? At this breakfast, we have Lucien Debray.
Hello, it is editing Ileana here, and because the short series obviously has its own adaptations, some of the secondary characters, they like combine and change, so for the sake of anyone who's not clearly a character in the short series, I've chosen my own images to represent them as characters, so hope you enjoyed that.
Who's the secretary to the French Minister of the Interior. Maximilien Morel, who's Mr. Morel's son and is an army man. Beauchamp, who's a high-up journalist. Chateau Renard, he's important but not that important. And the Count of Monte Cristo. Now, Albert doesn't actually know Maximilien, but Maximilien saved Chateau Renard's life, and now he gets to be part of squad and show up to this breakfast because of it. At the breakfast, we learned that Albert is destined to marry Eugenia Danglars, so Danglars' daughter. And at this breakfast, they all learn how the Count of Monte Cristo saved Albert's life, and they also are like, wow, he's so mysterious, so cool. He's creating an essence, a presence for himself in this world. After everyone has breakfast, everyone leaves, and Albert decides to do a little house tour. And they go into one of the other rooms, and he sees a portrait of a beautiful young woman that looks exactly like Mercedes. And Albert goes, oh, this is a portrait my mom commissioned. My mom is Mercedes. So Albert de Morcerf is the son of Mercedes and Ferdinand. I was like, what the hell? I was jaw dropped when I saw this. And after this house tour, Albert's like, you have to meet my parents. They want to say thank you to you for saving my life. Count is like, okay. So he sees Ferdinand and he sees Mercedes, and Mercedes is like, and like peeks through the window when he leaves to kind of have another look. The Count doesn't bat an eye, so the Count doesn't recognize him at all. But Mercedes, it's like, does she recognize him? Like, does she know it's him? We don't know. We're shifting again. And we're gonna introduce ourselves to Bertuccio. So Bertuccio is the footman of the Count of Monte Cristo. Monte Cristo has all these like servants and stuff, and his two main ones are Ali and Bertuccio. And they're like loyal to him like nobody's business. So the Count decides to buy a house in Auteuil, this burb right outside of Paris. And he brings Bertuccio to this house. And Bertuccio's starting to be like kind of weird, and the Count is like, And basically, the Count is like, tell me what's wrong. And Bertuccio's like, okay. And this is his backstory, which is important. Bertuccio and his brother. His brother gets wrongfully imprisoned by Villefort. Bertuccio begs for his brother's life. Villefort's like, no. So Bertuccio's like, fine, I'm gonna kill Villefort. So he goes, tracks down Villefort. He's hiding in the bushes to go stab him when he sees Villefort digging a hole in the garden and puts a baby in the box in the garden. And so then he stabs Villefort. He opens the box, sees a baby boy that's alive in the box. So he takes the baby, gives it to an orphanage. His sister-in-law always wanted a baby, and now her husband's like dead in jail. So he goes back to the orphanage, takes the baby, gives it to his sister-in-law. So he takes this baby that Villefort was trying to bury to his sister-in-law's house. This baby grows up evil and burns the house down with her inside of it. And this baby's name is Benedetto, and he's an evil little bitch. Okay, so yeah, now he's in the galleys because he literally killed his adopted mother. And the reason Bertuccio was all weird in this house that Count of Monte Cristo had bought was because this is where he had stabbed Villefort. And this house used to belong to Madame Saint Méran and the Saint Méran family. Okay, so his wife's family, the one that he got married to the day that Edmond Dantes was arrested. Bertuccio also witnessed other stuff. So he also went to the inn that Carterousse now owned because Carterousse kind of let the smugglers smuggle things through there. And he watched Carterousse kill the jeweler that came to appraise the value of the diamond. He also saw Caderousse murder his wife, La Carcaton, but he was hiding in the house when this happened, and he got arrested for the murder of this woman and this man. And then when he was in jail, the Abe Bassoni heard of his tale and saved him. And then in the letter, the Abe Bassoni told Bercuccio to work for Monte Cristo, and that's why Bercuccio now works for Monte Cristo. Basically, you can just tell that this was a lot kind of planned by the Count of Monte Cristo. The Count now has two houses, one on the Champs-Elysees and one at Auteuil. And the Auteuil house is former Madame Saint-Méran house that Villefort buried a baby in the backyard in. Okay. The Count tells Danglars, who's kind of the main banker in Paris, to come to his house so he can get the money. So Danglars comes to his house with these beautiful fine horses. And the Count tells Bertuccio to tell Danglars that he's not home. And he's also like, also get me those horses. I don't care what I have to pay. You are going to buy me those horses. So Ali buys those horses then and there. And then the Count goes to Danglars' house with those horses attached to his carriage to ask Danglars for unlimited money. And Danglars is like, unlimited money? And the Count of Monte Cristo is like, well, French and Thompson gives me unlimited money. Just so you know, French and Thompson is like the English bank that he created. French and Thompson are him. But everyone thinks they're like a whole other bank. Danglars doesn't want to look broke. So he's like, yeah, Count, you can have like unlimited money. Like it's all yours. So now Danglars meets up with his wife, Madame Danglars, who is really tight with Lucien Debray. And she's like, where are my horses? You sold my horses. Those dappled grays that Danglars had gone to visit the Count of Monte Cristo with were actually her horses. Like she owned the horses. And she's like, where are my dappled grays? And the Baron Danglars is like, I sold them. And she's not happy. She was like, I was gonna give my friend, Madame Villefort, and her son the opportunity to use those horses to ride around town tomorrow. And then the Count of Monte Cristo pulls up to Danglars' house with the horses that he just bought from Madame Danglars. And she's pissed. Like she is so mad. The Count of Monte Cristo stirred the familial pot a little bit. And then the next day, Madame Villefort and her son are on their little trip around Paris, right where the Count of Monte Cristo's houses, horses go crazy, and Ali calms the horses down. And the Count of Monte Cristo's like, oh my God, those horses, come in my house while you get your bearings together. So now he has officially met Madame Villefort and her 8-year-old son, Edward. So now Villefort has to go and thank the Count of Monte Cristo, for saving his family. Now, at the Villefort house, there's a fence, and there's a boy on one side of the fence, and he's in love with the girl on the other side of the fence. The boy, Maximilian Morel. The girl, Valentine Villefort. So Maximilian and Valentine are now in love with each other, and she's like 18 and he's like 30, but apparently that was normal back then. They're in love with each other, but Valentine is engaged to Franz de Epiphanie Albertomi. And Valentine is actually Villefort's daughter from his first marriage. So Madame Villefort is not actually the one he got married to when Edmond Dantes was arrested. Madame Villefort is his second wife. From his first wife, he had his daughter Valentine. From his second wife, he has his son Edward. Everyone following? Good. In this household, we have Villefort, we have Madame de Villefort, we have their son Edward, we have Valentine, we also have Notier. Notier, at this point in the book, is completely immobile, paralyzed. The only thing he can do is blink his eyes and swallow food. But he can't talk, he can't do anything except blink his eyes. And he lives at the house. Valentine, her grandpa are homies. She feels like no one else in the house really cares about her, but her grandpa does. So, just to show you how everyone's connected again, we have Ferdinand and Mercedes, and they have a son, Albert, who's best friends with Fran. Albert is engaged to Danglars and Madame Danglars' daughter, Eugenie. So they're engaged. Villefort and Madame Villefort are married. Villefort's daughter from his first marriage is Valentine, who's engaged to Franz de Epiphanie. Valentine, however, is in love with Maximilian, who's Morel's son. So now he's being introduced to high society. We've met all the new characters. Part 4, meddling, with a capital M. This is when the Count is really going to be sticking his fingers into pots that he should not be. So, because Villefort wants to thank the Count for saving his wife and son, he invites him over to the house. The Count goes to the house and brings some of the medicine that he used to cure Edward and Madame Villefort from their scare with the horses. And he's talking to Madame Villefort, and he's like, yes, this is magical stuff. 1 drop is great for health, 5 drops means death. And she's like, Huh. While all of this is happening, Count has a slave girl who's now freed because they're in Paris. Her name is Haiti, and she was the daughter of the Ali Templini in Greece. He lost his life when his confidant, Ferdinand, we learned, because Haiti's like, that's the man, pointing at Ferdinand, but no one else knows this, betrayed the Ali Templini. That's how he got his status as a person in the French society. They know he was important, but they don't know that he was the betrayer. So now the Count has Haiti and is taking custody of Haiti. The Count decides to have a dinner at his house in Auteuil, and he decides to invite all of the people that we've met in Parisian high society. The Villefort, the Danglers, the Morcefs. He's inviting all of them. Albert's like, I don't want to marry you, Jenny. She's not my type. And then he's like, okay, you take your mom to the seaside and I'll have this dinner. And at this dinner, I will try to find a way to make it so they don't want to marry you, Jenny. Albert's like, bet. So Albert and his mom dip, and there's this big dinner happening at a till with all of our characters. Valentine and Maximilian are still talking to this fence, and she begs Notier, and she's like, Notier, grandpa, please don't make me marry France. Like, I don't love France. I don't want to be with France. And so Notier's like, I'll try to do something. He's completely sound of mind. He's just paralyzed all the way. So he makes them bring a dictionary, makes them bring a notary, and he basically proves that he's sound of mind by blinking when he wants the words to stop, and is like, if my granddaughter Valentine is forced to marry Franz d'Epiphany, then she doesn't get any of my inheritance. He will donate all of his money to the poor. The notary is like, you know, Villefort can challenge your decision. And then Villefort's like, he knows I can't because I can't take money from the poor like that. Villefort is supposed to be like the judge of the people. But Villefort's being pissy and stubborn, and he's like, you know what? It's my daughter though, and I'm gonna say who she's gonna marry. She's still gonna marry Franz. So now Valentine's written out of the will. She's still gonna have to marry Franz. Poor her and Maximilian. Sorry, not everyone has a happy ending. Villefort's like fuming and annoyed about this whole situation. It's right after this moment that he realizes that he has to go to dinner at a till, where, might I remind you, he was once stabbed and buried a baby in the ground. He also invites to this dinner Major Calavanti and his son Andrea to introduce this Italian boy to Parisian high society. Both the father and the son are actors who received letters to come and play this specific role at this dinner, and they were given a lot of money on the DL to do so. And in case anyone's wondering where we are in the book right now, we're about halfway through. This whole time throughout the story, Monte Cristo keeps giving fake news about the stock market and stuff so that Danglers keeps losing money slowly and slowly and slowly. Dinner party time! This dinner party scene is crazy. At this dinner party, right, when Major Calavanti and the son enter the house, Mercutio's like, Andrea Calavanti, the son, is actually Benedetto. So this baby that was put in a box, buried by Villefort, then taken to be raised by Benedetto's sister-in-law, who's now dead, is now cosplaying an Italian boy of high society. He also was like the other person in that house that night that I went to stab Villefort was Madame Danglers. They're eating all this fancy food at the dinner party, and they take a tour of the house and they show up in this red room. And basically, the Count of Monte Cristo is like, I think there was a crime in this house because I was digging in the garden and I found a box with a dead baby in it. And he's like, Villefort, what would you do? You're the king's attorney. Madame Danglers and Villefort are not having this. They're like, yeah, the Count of Monte Cristo is being kind of evil. Now, the dinner party ends. We know Benedetto-Andrea is the son of Madame Danglers and Villefort. Andrea now has this income and is like playing this character, and he, after the dinner, is like robbed in the street. And it's actually Carter Roos. Carter Roos ended up in the galleys, befriended Benedetto, and now is out. And now is like, Benedetto, I taught you so much. Give me some of the money that you're being given by the Count of Monte Cristo. So after this dinner, you know, Madame Danglers is kind of upset, and Lucien Debray is over there trying to be like, hey babe, what's going on? Baron Danglers walks on in and is like, Lucien Debray, get the hell out. Madame Danglers is like, you can't talk to him like that. And he's like, oh, sorry, I want to talk to my wife about issues. And basically, Madame Danglers would get money from Danglers and then get insider trading from Lucien, and they would bet on the stock market together. Danglers was like, well, since you're doing that with my money, since I'm the one giving you that money for all that betting, every time I incur losses, you have to incur losses. And he was like, I'm not out here to pay for another man to be sleeping with my wife. He doesn't say it like that, but he essentially implies that. So Danglers is losing money fast. And then all of a sudden he's like, but this dinner, this Andrea Calavanti, he's like the son of a major Italian family. They probably have money. Should I marry my daughter to Andrea Calavanti? And he's talking about all these things to the Count of Monte Cristo. The Count of Monte Cristo is like, yeah, I mean, they have a lot of money. And like, do you even know how Ferdinand got into the position that he is today? And Danglers was like, yeah, I don't know about that. And the Count of Monte Cristo is like, yeah, you should investigate that. How Ferdinand Morcerf got to where he was before you marry your daughter to his son. While this is happening, Madame Danglers goes to Villefort's office in secret and they have a conversation. Villefort's like, after the whole situation, I went back to the house on a till and I dug holes around the whole yard and there was never a box with a baby in it. Like, that's gone. That baby is alive. I traced that it went to this orphanage and to this family in Corsica, and then I lost the trail. And for some reason, the Count of Monte Cristo knows this information, and some reason he's trying to hold it over her head. And he's like, I'm gonna keep on searching to find out what happened to this child. In my comments, like in the book, I wrote, Danglars is so dumb, but Villefort, he scares me. And he does. He's a scary, scary villain. Because he's smart to find out the history of the Count of Monte Cristo. Villefort talks to the Abbé Busoni, who's like friends with the Count of Monte Cristo, which is Count, but in disguise. He also talks to Lord Wilmershire, who's also the Count in disguise. That weekend, the Morcerfs have a ball at their house. Mercedes works tirelessly for this ball that everyone's excited to show up for. And everyone's like, is the Count of Monte Cristo gonna be here? Everyone's obsessed with the Count of Monte Cristo. Mercedes is like very aware when she meets the Count about how the Count is not eating at this ball under Ferdinand's roof. So she's like, I think we should go on a walk outside, and takes him to the greenhouse and is like, have some grapes. Have some oranges. And he's like, I don't know. I'm not going to eat it. This is like their first one-on-one conversation. She's kind of like asking about his life. And he basically tells her that he went to war for 20 years and he thought his girl was going to wait for her when he came back, but she didn't. She married someone else. Like, this is not homies reuniting. This is still Mercedes de Morcerf and the Count of Monte Cristo. And then at this ball, news gets delivered that Valentine's grandfather, the Saint Moran grandfather, died on their way to Paris. Her grandma gets very sick, and her grandma is like, I feel like it's my duty to send my daughter off to marriage, so she needs to marry Franz de Epiphany before I die. And she's like, and I'm gonna die soon, so she needs to get married to Franz like ASAP. So they send for Franz, who's still in Italy, to come and get married to Valentine. Valentine and Maximilian are talking through this fence again, and Maximilian's like, Valentine, if you marry Franz, I'm gonna put a gun to my head. I'm telling you, it's so dramatic. And she's like, I can't do anything about it, but don't do anything stupid until I'm actually married. And this whole time, everyone in Paris is obsessed with the Count of Monte Cristo. Morel is too. Morel has a sister and a brother-in-law, and he's just like homies with that whole family. And so Morel's like, I can talk to the Count and he can save us. And she's like, I'm suspicious of the Count. Like, everyone loves him, but I don't know how I feel about him. But I'll go talk to my grandfather, Mr. Nodier. So she goes to Nodier and she's like, Grandpa, I'm in love with someone else. I'm in love with Morel, who like saved people in the army and the wars and whatever. And she's like, and they're gonna marry me to Franz today, because grandma wants to see me get married before she dies. So when Franz gets there, Notier calls in a notary and Franz and Beauchamp and like all of the squad to come in, and he gets the dictionary and he tells him the story of how Franz's father died, how he was trying to infiltrate the Bonapartists, but he was actually in the monarchy, and how the president had killed Quasical de Epiphany. And he's like, Tier, do you know who the president was? And then M. Notier was like, me. I was the president. I killed your father. And then Franz was like, I cannot marry your daughter. Sorry, Valentine, we're not engaged. And so the engagement is thrown off. Yay! So anyway, Madame de Saint-Méran dies. Maximilian was sneaking into the house to visit Villefort and like hides in a tree when the doctor and Villefort walk by. And the doctor's like, Villefort, I think someone's poisoning the people in your house. And Villefort's like, no, that can't be. And now because Valentine is no longer marrying Franz, she gets written back into the will to inheriting all the money. While this is all going down, Albert is hanging out with the Count of Monte Cristo. He really likes the Count of Monte Cristo, considers him a friend, is like, love this man. And the Count is like, let me introduce you to my slave girl, Haiti. So he goes and meets Haiti, and she's like the most beautiful, gorgeous person you've ever seen. And she's basically telling this story about how she was betrayed and how her father was killed and how she and her mother were sold into slavery and blah, blah, blah. But she doesn't say who betrayed her father. She keeps it the title of like my father's right-hand man. The Count's also like, Albert, do not say your last name under any circumstance. Albert feels bad of everything that happened to Haiti, but he doesn't realize that it's his father that did all the betrayal things. While this is happening, Danglars meets up with Ferdinand and is like, I'm calling off the marriage between Albert and Eugenie. And Ferdinand's like, bro, what? Why? I'm gonna marry Eugenie to Andrea Calavanti, who, to be fair, he doesn't know, are actually half siblings. Basically, a tidbit was given, and Beauchamp, the investigator, comes to Albert in private and he's like, yo, bro, your father like betrayed Ali Templini. And Albert's like, nah, you're making shit up. And he's like, no, bro, I'm not. And he's like, that evidence is circumstantial. You have to get better evidence than that. So Beauchamp is like, I'm an investigator. Bet. So he goes and tries to find more evidence. Albert's upset about this because Albert's like, he doesn't want his father to be a betrayal. He wants to clear his father's name. Albert's like, we got a duel for my father's honor. And Beauchamp's like, let me do more research. I just want to give you like a forewarning of the stuff that I'm finding. Okay, now we're back in the Villefort household. And Notier and Maximilian and Valentine and Barrios, who is Notier's main servant, all hanging out in the room having a good time because now Valentine's no longer married to France. Barrios was like, it's a hot day. So Notir's like, have some of my lemonade. Barrios drinks the lemonade and dies. So now there's another death in the Villefort household. The doctor is like, Valentine killed Barrios. Like, this is all Valentine's doing. Valentine's offing people one by one. The doctor's like, you need to start an investigation in your house ASAP. People are dying. While all this is happening, Carterus gets to Andrea again. Is like, babe, you gotta give me even more money. Like, you're living the lifestyle of a prince. Like, I want more. And Andrea's like, bro, I don't have that much money to give you. And Carterus is like, yeah, you do. And then Andrea's like, well, the count was showing me the plans of his house. Like, we could maybe try to rob the count. The Count and Ollie watch the two men break into the house to rob it. Count shows himself to Carterus as the Abe Bissonian. It's like, I gave you chances in this life and you keep taking these chances and doing it for evil. Like, what are you doing? And basically, Busoni kind of forces Carterus to tell the story of how him and Benedetto are homies in prison. And he basically makes Carterus write a piece of paper being like, me and Benedetto are criminals who escaped the galleys together. He's like, okay, you can leave now. Stop doing evil. And then Andrea comes and boom, stabs Carterus in the back, and then Carterus is like, oh, help me, I'm dying. And then the Count of Monte Cristo and Ali show up and it's like, oh my god, what is happening? Carterus is like, my friend is trying to murder me. And the Count's like, write that down. So he writes it down. He's like, I'm gonna die. And then while he's dying, after he's written these papers and signing them that he's like a criminal and Andrea Calavanti is the one that killed him, and the Count of Monte Cristo is like, Carterus, I tried to save your life so many times to give you more chances at life, and you ended up just doing evil. And then he like goes down low. He's like, and I am Edmond Dantes. And then Carterus dead. And that is also the end of section 4, meddling. So the Count of Monte Cristo has adopted Haiti, whose father was killed by Ferdinand. Remember, Ferdinand and Mercedes have the son Albert. Notier killed Franz's father, so the engagement between them is off. The engagement between them is also off because Danglars is broke and needs money and is like, Andrea Calavanti has money. Little does he know that Andrea is the love child between his wife and Villefort. So he's about to marry his daughter to her half-sibling. And Andrea is homies with Carterus from the prison, and Carterus is now dead. Valentine is still in love with Maximilian, but Villefort doesn't know that yet. So I think we're all caught up. Part 5. Shit hits the fan. Beauchamp confirms through other evidence that it is in fact Ferdinand who betrayed the Ali Templini, and Albert is like too proud to stand down. So the Count is like, you need a break. So they go on a trip to Italy. The minute they arrive in Italy, it's printed in the newspaper that Ferdinand is the betrayer of Prince Ali Templini, and Albert goes right back up to Paris and is like, I'm gonna duel Beauchamp. Ferdinand walked into work without reading the paper, and so when he shows up to the house, they're like, we're gonna put you on trial, babe, like right now. So they're in trial, and then Haiti shows up and is like, I want to talk against this man. Ferdinand was her father's right-hand man, so she knows him well. And she's like, my master, the Count of Monte Cristo, does not know I'm here, but I will testify against Ferdinand. She testifies, tells her story, and everyone's like, Ferdinand. And he's so thrown off, like he didn't even read the paper coming into work, that he has literally nothing to say for himself. And everyone's like, you have nothing to say to defend yourself? Beauchamp, he sneaked Albert in to watch the trial, and he feels really bad for Albert seeing his father literally just getting like tomatoes thrown on him. So he's like, you know what, I'm gonna tell you where I found the evidence that like confirmed what your father did. The evidence traced back to Danglars. And Albert's like, Danglars, you're the one that did research into my father. What is wrong with you? And Danglars was like, oh, the Count of Monte Cristo told me to. So Albert and Beauchamp go up to the Count's house and is like, let's fight. But the Count is like, nah, I'm taking a nap. Mercutio's like, he'll be at the opera later. So Albert goes back home and is like talking to his mom. He's like, Mom, did you notice how the Count didn't eat anything under our roof? The Count is Oriental. In Oriental customs, you never eat under the roof of your enemy. The Count is my father's enemy. I need to defend my father's honor. So they pull up to the opera and the Count's there and everyone is there. Albert kind of makes a scene about how the Count is his father's enemy and like almost tries to throw the glove at the Count's feet. But the Count's like, nah, I take that as a thrown glove. We duel for death tomorrow morning. And he tells Beauchamp and Morris, like, I gotta kill him because he disregarded my image at the opera. So now he's gonna kill Albert. Mercedes literally just walks into the Count's house and is like, hi, Count. He's like, what are you doing here? She literally goes, Edmond, you will not kill my son. He's like, what name did you just say? And she's like, I said yours. She's like, it's not Madame de Morcerf who has shown up to your house begging for her son's life. It's Mercedes. The Count did not expect this. And then the Count's like, and I quote, it is not I who strikes M de Morcerf, but Providence. And Mercedes is like, why do you get to represent Providence? And I'm like, that's a good question. And not to be like all English major, even though I wasn't an English major, but that is the theme of the story. Why is the Count of Monte Cristo Providence? And she's like, don't hate Ferdinand because I chose to marry him. Like, blame me. And the Count's like, I don't hate him because he married you. I hate him because he put me in prison. And Mercedes is like, he did what? And she's like, please don't kill my son. The name Edmond Dantes holds a pure place in my heart. And if you murder him, you'll be tarnishing that name forever. The Count does not know what to do. Like, he's stressed. But then the Count is like, but you don't know what it's like to be wrongly accused of a crime you didn't commit while your father starves to death. And Mercedes literally snaps back and says, but you don't know what it's like to see the man you love kill your son. This scene is so tense. He sees Mercedes begging for her son's life. Edmond is so heartbroken. He's like, fine, I will not kill your son. I will die instead. And she's like, who talks about dying? And he's like, well, one of us has to die. And I've promised that I wouldn't kill your son. So it's just gonna have to be me. I'm telling you, everyone's like, oh, something didn't go my way. Time to off myself. After this whole interaction, the Count is freaking out about Providence and rules the vengeance that he's doing. And he's like, you know what? I must die. So he decides to write his will. And as he's writing his will, he hears Haiti like asleep on the floor outside of his room. And he basically leaves all of his stuff to like Maximilian and to Haiti. And then she wakes up and then sees that he's writing the will and she tears it up and she goes, if you're gonna die, then I'm gonna die too. So this whole time he kind of sees Haiti as like his adopted daughter. In this moment, he's like, what if she loves me more than just the father figure? Anyway, the next morning, they arrived at the battleground. It's Bouchamp, it's Morel, it's like squad is at the battleground. And the Count is like ready to die. And Albert's late. And Albert pulls up, he literally bows down. And he's like, the Count of Monte Cristo, I was wrong. You have every reason in the world to be the enemy of my father because of the whole like prison situation. I'm sorry. And no one dies. The battle doesn't take place. Albert, when he gets home, he starts packing up his stuff and he's like, I gotta run away. And Mercedes is like, I gotta leave too. And then they meet up and they're like, let's skedaddle together. Dante is like, figures out this plan that they plan to run away and writes a letter to Mercedes basically saying, when I was a sailor, I saved up a dowry that I was gonna give you when we got married and I buried it at my father's house in Marseille. I know you won't take any of his money, but please take the dowry that was supposed to be yours from me. And they're like, yeah, we'll do that. So they have this small dowry from when Mercedes was supposed to marry Dante way early on. When the Count gets home, Haiti and the Count share a moment. Ferdinand is like, why didn't my son Albert come straight to me after the duel? He should have come to me and told me how he defended my name and honor. Ferdinand goes to the Count's house and is like, what the hell is that? Why are you not dead? And the Count is like, oh yeah, he apologized to me. And Ferdinand is like, absolutely not. If my son won't defend my name, then I will. We're gonna have a duel. And the Count's like, are you sure you want that? Boom, boom, boom. I'm Edmond Dantes. And Ferdinand is like, oh my god. And he literally like stumbles out of the house freaking out. When he gets home, he sees his wife and son, Albert, leaving. So he goes upstairs, watches the carriage with his wife and son leave, and he shoots himself in the head. He actually offs himself. For the first time in this book, someone actually offs themselves when they say they will. So now Ferdinand is dead. In the Villefort household, Notier has been giving some of Valentine his medicine every day, like a little bit more and a little bit more. The medication is the poison. If you have a lot and your body's not accustomed to it, you die. But if you take it, you survive. And while Maximilian is hanging out with Squad in the house, Valentine takes some sugar water. She gets seriously ill and is on her deathbed. And so then Maximilian's freaking the out. So he goes to the Count of Monte Cristo, who's like his brother, his homie, his friends. He's like, Count, like another person in the Villefort family is about to die. And the Count is like, that's not my problem. And I quote, God has condemned them and they must submit to their punishments. But then Moral's like, but I love her. And the Count says, and I quote, you love Valentine, the daughter of the accursed race. But then he's like, Moral loves Valentine. Like, I need to save Valentine because I love the Moral family and that's who Maximilian loves. I need to save her. In the Dangler household, Eugenie's engaged to Andrea Calavanti. She goes up to her father and she's like, I don't want to marry Andrea Calavanti. I'm rich, I'm happy, I don't want to be married. That's nothing that I want to do in my life. And she's very candid. She's like, this is not what I want to be. And Dangler's just like, I appreciate you being candid. If we're just gonna have a candid conversation, daughter, you're marrying Andrea Calavanti because I'm broke. And she's like, broke? And he's like, yeah. So if you want to have money and a good life, you need to marry him. And she's like, okay, like I'll marry him if I get to keep the principal and you only get the, and like she makes like a money deal with him and he's like, bet. And she's like, okay, bet, I'll marry Andrea Calavanti. So the contract between Andrea and Eugenie is supposed to be signed the next night. And Andrea goes up to the Count and is like, can you be my signer? Like my father isn't here. And the Count is like, no, don't engage me in this mess. This is no part doing with me. I barely know you. And this is an important side note. The music teacher, Mademoiselle Louise Armadilli, has asked the Count of Monte Cristo for passport passports to Italy for her and her brother. And the music teacher is the one that Eugenie hangs out with all the time and is always playing music with. Party for the marriage contract between Andrea and Eugenie is about to be signed. All of Paris is here for this wedding. The Count says, like right before the contract is about to be signed, that they found the coat of the man who broke into his house. And in that coat was a piece of paper that said that Tartaru's prisoners with Benedetto, who's cosplaying as Andrea Calavanti. And they look around the room. He's gone. He snuck out while this information was being revealed by the Count of Monte Cristo. Andrea, gone. Louise and Eugenie are in the room, and Eugenie's like, bro, man, I hate them. I don't want to stay here. If I stay here, my father's going to try to marry me off to another man. This is not the lifestyle that I want. And then Louise is like, well, I have the passport that says me and my brother are going to move to Italy to be artists. So Eugenie cuts off her hair to get like a boy haircut, and they get in a carriage and they get out of Paris to go to Italy. And now Danglars is hashtag officially daughterless. Okay, so Andrea is also running away. He goes to this tavern on the outside of Paris where a young man and his sister had just entered in for the night. The police chase him all the way to this tavern. He's like trying to sneak out of his room, goes down a chimney, does like that thing like where you stand in a chimney, and he slips and he falls out of the chimney into this room. And in the room, there are two women sleeping in the same bed. It's Eugenie and Louise. I was literally gagged when I saw this. I was just like, oh my God. Oh my God. They're like, oh my God, Andrea, get the out of our room, you freaking murderer. And Louise is like, fly, get out of here. And Eugenie's like, or kill yourself, like die. Anyways, he gets captured and the women are sent back to Paris. Back in the Villefort household, it's like a prison. They're not letting anyone in or out because someone's trying to poison everyone. And the only people that have access to Valentine's room are Edward and her stepmother, Madame Villefort. And Valentine is living in this state of delirium. And then one day she wakes up in the middle of the night to see the Count of Monte Cristo in her room. And she's like, what the hell are you doing here? For moral's sake, I've decided that I want to come help and save you. I rented the house next door, and I've been watching to see who's been feeding you food and drinks, and if I think they've been tampered with, I give you untampered food and drinks. And she's like, that's weird. And then he's like, I know who's been trying to kill you. And she's like, who? And he's like, you need to see for yourself. So he's like, what you need to do is you need to pretend to be asleep, and then you can peek and you can see who's been tampering with your food and drink. So she's doing that, and then she sees that it's freaking Madame de Villefort who's trying to kill her. And so the next day the Count goes in and she's like, why does Madame de Villefort want to kill me? And the Count is like, oh, you poor sweet innocent girl. She's trying to kill you because her son Edward is left with nothing. And if you die, then your money goes to your father, who will inevitably leave it to her son. So then he's like, I will save you, but you need to have hope. And then he kills her. The next morning they come in, Valentine is dead. Maximilian runs through the house and is like, she's dead? And then Villefort's like, who the hell are you? And Maximilian's like, I was her betrothed. I deserve to be here with the body. And he runs downstairs, grabs Notier's paralyzed body and carries him up the stairs and is like, tell them that I was gonna marry Valentine. And Notier was like, yeah, you were gonna marry Valentine. Maximilian turns to Villefort and he's like, you gotta do something. You gotta find out who this murderer is, because that is your job. If you don't find her murderer, I will. And then Villefort's like, we need someone to pray over her body quick. And they're like, there's a priest next door. And so the Abbé Busoni comes in and prays over the body and is left alone with Valentine and Notier. Maximilian is like, she's dead. And I hate the Count because the Count told me he would save Valentine and he didn't. Anyway, after this, the Count goes to Danglars and is like, Danglars, I need $5 million. And Danglars is like, what? And he's like, yeah, unlimited credit. I need $5 million. Danglars is like, I'm broke. And the Count's like, you have a day to give me the $5 million. And Danglars is like, bet. And then he was given $5 million to give to charity. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to take this $5 million and I'm going to flee to Italy. Valentine is being brought to the cemetery to be buried. And the Count goes to visit Morel, and Morel's like, I'm going to kill myself. Like, I want to die because Valentine is dead. I'm going to KMS. And the Count was like, don't KMS. And he's like, no, I will. What do I have to live for? And then the Count was like, I will not have the son of the man I saved kill themselves. And Morel's like, what? And Maximilian's like, who the hell are you? And the Count is like, I am Edmond Dantes. I held you when you were a baby. And Morel and Julie and her husband all come down and they're like, oh my God, you're our savior who saved us all those years ago, blah, blah, blah. We love you. We love you. And then the Count's like, so tell your brother not to kill himself. And then Morel's still like, no, I'm going to kill myself. And the Count's like, okay, I will give you the guns that you will use to kill yourself in exactly 1 month. I will help you in your death, but you have to promise to stay alive for the next month. And Morel's like, okay, sure, whatever. Down in Marseille, Marseille, Debray is staying in the same apartment building as Albert and his mother, and Madame Danglars goes to visit Debray and is like, my daughter's gone, my husband's gone, and Lucien Debray's like, that's not really my problem. He's like, yeah, you're no use to me now, like, I'm gonna take the remaining of our money and go with it. And she was like, what the hell? Albert and his mother, Mercedes, are like super broke, so Albert decides to sign up for the army and is like, bye mama, I will save us and build up our honor from the ground up. And she's like, I will pray for you every single day. Then Mercutio goes to the prison where Benedetto is. It's like, I'm gonna tell you who your real father is. In the Villefort household, Villefort is hanging out with Notier, and Notier is looking out the window at Madame de Villefort and their son Edward with evil vengeance eyes. And all of a sudden, Villefort realizes who's killing everyone in the household. And he's like, oh my fucking God, it's my wife. Right before Villefort goes to the trial where Benedetto is going to be on trial, he goes to his wife's room and he's like, I know you've been killing everyone, but that will put such a stain to my name if I bring you to trial. So you need to kill yourself the way that you've been killing everyone in the household. You need to be dead by the time I get home. And she's like, what? No, like I did this all for my son. Like my son deserved to have an inheritance. And Villefort is like, how do I know that you're not going to kill my son? And she's like, me kill my son? I did what I did for my son. I would never kill my son. And he's like, I don't want to hear it. You better be dead by the time I get home from this trial. At the trial, Benedetto's like, change the order of the questions that you asked me. So they're like, okay, when's your birthday? And he says his birthday. And then they're like, and where were you born? He's like, and then they're like, what's your name? And he's like, I don't know my birth name, but I know who my father is. The king's attorney, that guy over there, Villefort. When he said this, a woman in the crowd fainted. And when they sat her up, they realized it was Madame Danglars. Obviously, Villefort's deep shit. And then he's like, oh my God, like everything is destroyed. Like I need to save my wife. Like we can still have a family. So he rushes home to go save his wife to stop her from killing herself. And he's like, where's Edward? Where's Edward? And everyone's like, he's upstairs with his mom. He goes into the room. She's dead in the doorway, but he sees Edmond asleep on the couch. So he's like, oh my God, thank God. Goes to Edward. He's dead. Edward is dead. She killed herself and her son. The Abe Bassoni shows up in the house and he's like, why are you always here? And the Abe's like, do you repent what you did? And Villefort's like, yeah. And then the Abe Bassoni's like, you have sufficiently repaid your debt, and takes off his wig. And it's like, I am Edmond Dantes. Villefort's like, you're Edmond Dantes. Look what you've done. And shows him the dead boy. And then Dantes is like, oh, not on his plan. Goes, tries to save the boy. Fails. He goes to find Villefort to tell him that he was unable to save the boy. And Villefort's in the garden digging holes in the ground, being like, I will find my son. I will find my son. Villefort has gone crazy because now all three of his kids are dead. And Dantes has a moment after seeing the dead boy and Villefort go crazy. He says like, what have I done? Like, have I taken this too far? Like, I think you have. Maximilian and the Count go on a journey to Marseille. In Marseille, Dante meets with Mercedes again. He's like, Mercedes, like, can I do anything for you? And she's like, I just want my son to stay alive. And he's like, but can I do anything for you? And she's like, my happiness and existence is just like on the happiness and existence of my son. And then he's like, well, what are you going to do for this time? And she's like, I'm going to pray for the rest of my time. And he's like, will I ever get to see you again? And she was like, yes, we're going to meet again upstairs. And he's like, bruh. So he dips and he says bye to her forever. He's really seeing like the abyss of doubt for his whole plan, like after seeing the death of little Edward. He decides to go back to the prison and he goes to check out the Abe Faria's cell and he like buys the notes that were hidden in the wall. After finding kind of like this relic from the Abe Faria, he starts to feel hope again. The boat back to Marseille, he's like whispering the name of a woman. He's whispering the name Haiti. Anyway, so he finds Morel at the cemetery and it's like, Morel, you need to have hope. There are men who have suffered far more than you have ever had. And then he literally recollects his own story about going to prison and his dad dying and his woman marrying another man. And he's like, so other people have suffered a lot more than you, like, don't kill yourself. And Morel's like, no, I'm still gonna kill myself. He also has a moment of revelation of he, ruined Villefort, he ruined Ferdinand, but he can maybe save Danglars. So he goes off to Italy, rushes off to Italy to go save Danglars. Danglars ran away to Italy and doesn't know any Italian and doesn't know what he's doing and obviously gets kidnapped by Vampa. And in prison, he's like, what's my ransom? And they're like, your ransom is $5 million. She's like, if I give you $5 million, all I have left is $50,000 to my name. They're like, it's $5 million. So he decides to not give up his ransom. And like every piece of bread or wine is $50,000. So in prison over these days, it's like paying $50,000 for food. The Count of Monte Cristo shows up and he's like, the Count of Monte Cristo, what are you doing here? Dantes is like, do you repent for all the evil that you've done? And Danglars is like, yeah, I do. And then he reveals, he's like, I am Edmond Dantes. And like, you're Edmond Dantes. And he's like, yes. And I've ruined Villefort and I've ruined Ferdinand, but I can still save you. Go off, live your life in this world with the 50,000 banknote that you have. You can start again from the ground up. Then the Count of Monte Cristo rushes back to the island of Monte Cristo to meet Moral. And Moral is there and is like, I'm ready to die, babe. And the Count says, you who love, who are beloved, you who have faith and hope, oh, do not follow in my example. In this case, it would be a crime. And Maximilian's like, I'm sad and I'm lonely and I'm nothing without Valentine. So he takes the drugs and the pills that are on the table, swallows them, and he's like, oh, I'm ready to die. And as he's losing vision, the door opens and Valentine's there. And she's like, Maximilian. And he's like, and then Valentine's like, oh, Count, you've made me so happy. You've made me so happy. And the Count's like, tell me again how happy I've made you. I need to know for my own validation that I've made you happy and I'm not only bringing ruin. She's like, yes, you've made me so happy. Basically, Valentine and Haiti traveled together down south while she was being healed by Haiti. And Valentine's like, I love Haiti. I love her like a sister. And Dantes is so happy to hear that. He's like, you love Haiti as a sister? And she's like, yeah. And Haiti's in the door frame. And Dantes is like, Haiti, you are a princess. I will restore you everything your own. Like, leave, be free. Like, leave me forever. And she's like, I'm young and I've loved the life I live. I'll be sad to leave it. He's like, are you gonna kill yourself if I make you leave me? And she's like, yeah, I will. And then he's like, do you love me? And she's like, do I love you? Valentine, tell him, do you love Maximilian? Do I love you? And then they jump into each other's arms. And the Count is like, one word from you has given me more happiness than 20 years of vengefulness. So then the Count and Haiti like go into another room and Valentine stays with Maximilian while he's like in his slumber. Later, Maximilian wakes up from his slumber and is like, oh, the Count deceived me, grabs the knife from the table, is like, I'm gonna kill myself. And then Valentine's like, honey, don't do that. And he's like, Valentine, you're alive. The next morning, Valentine and Maximilian go to one of the Count's men who's holding a letter from the Count. And in this letter, it says that Notier is waiting for them in Marseille. He wants to give them their blessing before they go get married. In the letter, Dantes talks about how for a moment he thought he was equal to God. But through Christian humility, he learned that God alone possesses supreme power and infinite wisdom. It was not his duty to be providence. Like, he remembered what Mercedes said. He says he's leaving his house in Paris to Valentine and Maximilian. And then he said the reason he needed Moral to take that pill and almost die was because we must have felt what it is to die, that we may approach the enjoyments of living. And then he ends the letter with wait and hope. Valentine's like, where are they? And they see a boat on the horizon that Haiti and the Count are on. And Valentine's like, oh my God, are we ever gonna see them again? And Moral's like, babe, like his letter just said, wait and hope. And that's how the story ends. It ends with the line, wait and hope. Where is everyone now? Mercedes has turned to God and her son Albert is now in the army, building their name up from the ground. 3 men that were evil to Dantes, Ferdinand is dead, Villefort is crazy, Danglars is broke. Valentine and Maximilian are in love and they now live with Notier and they take care of him. The Count and Haiti are now in love and they're married and we assume and living together all happy. Andrea Cavalcanti unfortunately dead. And we were never clarified on this information, but I want it to be true, so I've decided to make it true. Louise and Eugenie are still in love together and living life together in Paris. That is the Count of Monte Cristo. For my final thoughts is, it's so complicated in this book, despite being this long, every single chapter is important. And if you've gone all the way through this, like, I did reveal the whole story to you, but the writing, when you can get past the old language, is actually really fun. Like, there's some hilarious dialogue, especially between like Albert, Franz, Beauchamp, like all of them. They have some really funny bantering moments and it's so well written and like information is so subtly revealed that even though you know the whole storyline, the book itself, again, after you can get past like the old writing, is honestly really funny and witty and I genuinely enjoyed it. And again, I made this video because talking to my dad was not enough. I need to talk about this book more because it's just an incredible book. Like everyone else, I was a huge Dantes and Mercedes shipper. I wanted them together at the end, but I honestly think the story held up better with the fact that he got together with Haiti. Editing Ileana here. I did a bad job of explaining this, but I think Haiti represents the future and Mercedes represents the past. And if Dantes ended up with Mercedes, then Dantes would have just been living in the past the whole time. Instead, now he's living in the future, which I think is good character growth for him. You know, when he saw Haiti and he realized that he spent 20 years trying to enact revenge on these other people instead of just like focusing on what would make him happy. Mercedes is a representation of that whole past philosophy and mindset, and Haiti is a representation of the future mindset. And so I think it was good that he ended up with Haiti. Not like the age gap and everything, that was weird, but like in terms of concept of like which woman he was supposed to end up with. I'm still like a Mercedes shipper, but I think the book is stronger because he ended up with Haiti. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this story as much as I did. Okay, until next time.